Welcome, everybody. Jerry, hi. Welcome back to the Digital Campfire. What are we going to be talking about today?
Hi, Tina. Well, we're going to be
Hi.
talking about the subject, don't escape reality, expand reality, please.
Nice.
But I have a couple preamble things to get to before we do that. Oh, everybody, please go ahead and turn on your cameras. I would like to see everyone here around the campfire. Hey, Landon. Hey, Christine, Zachary. Oh my gosh, everybody. Yay, you're joining in. That's awesome. Awesome. Ginny, Anna, where are you? Oh, Tina, you're back. Good. Oh, hi, Ginny. So I think Zachary brought up, Tina, you can remind me, or Zachary, you can remind me. I think he brought up at the end of the last session in the Animation Magic Show where 700 people at a time can draw whatever they want into a little template, freehand, and we render it into the show before the experience is done. And he was wondering if people sort of do their own self-portraits or whatever. And I said it was a much more eclectic collection of sketches than that. So I just put together a little, it was called a dance-off, where it was in the early days, and I just started taking sample sketches and swapping them out. So I will share that with you. And you can see a big variety. I sort of cycled the music to show the next dancer and the next and the next. And I quieted the music down because it would drive you nuts if it just kept looping forever. So, but here's a few of the dancers. Let's take a look. Here's the dance off. Now who's next? A big eyeball. It was such an amazing surprise, and this happened every time because there's never two drawings that are the same, and you have to remember there's 700 of these every single show that come in, so it's just an infinite variety. And as you can see, almost anything when it's doing behavior that you associate with the dance that's going on, just about anything goes. In fact, some of the more sort of sketchy, scratchy little ones were just super delightful. I like the panda. Oh, this guy's almost entirely made of triangles, and it still works. All right. So that's an example. It just was a very eclectic collection of things people would draw, and it wasn't necessarily self-portraits they were doing. It was just whatever came into their minds. And of course, there's the promise of having those things stay with you as your imaginary friends become AI characters that you train. So that could be an awesome thing. The next preamble thing, so that's the first. The second preamble thing I have before we get into our discussion proper today has to do with imagination. And a few years ago, I was asked to do an attraction about imagination that might play at Epcot. And so I went through the whole exercise, but the first step in that was to empower people about imagination and have them realize that all of us use our imagination. Once they were empowered, then I would take them into a space, and together they would create a brand new world, brand new characters, hopes and dreams and fears, all of that, and put together an experience that we would have together before the attraction was done. And then that would be created. So when they would go home, the people that were in that group that created it would then have Mushroom Land or whatever they created. There was one we did where there was a monkey mermaid that was invented, and that somebody thought her dream was to become a singer on stage. That was her big dream. And then they asked, well, what is her biggest fear? And somebody said stage fright. And so it was so meaningful. So people were getting to this sort of therapy sessions of building worlds. So, but step one was empower them so everyone felt welcome to participate in using their imagination on that day. And I must say, I had the joy of presenting this to Sir Ken Robinson, who did wonderful TED Talks. If you haven't seen his stuff, you should look him up. He's no longer with us, but he was amazing. And so he got a kick out of this imagination deck. So I will take you through it. So imagination, true or false? Imagination is a wondrous skill used by a select few. So in any given group, maybe there's the novelist and the architect in our group, but the rest of us, no, we're not imaginative. We're just logical or boring. That is false. Imagination is a wondrous skill we all use every single day. Imagination defines self. We imagine ourselves in the past, present, and future to get a sense of who we are and how others perceive us and how we fit into the timeline of our lives. Imagination allows a sense of self. So we wouldn't even have that feeling without imagination because we don't have proof. We just have how we imagine how we fit and how people think of us. Imagination defines others. Empathy, the ability to imagine what others are going through, even though we've never experienced it ourselves, is critical to how we relate to our fellow human beings. The world could use a lot more of this type of imagination. Imagination defines dreams. Now, our goals and dreams, whether they're grand aspirations like climbing Mount Everest or ordinary tasks, such as figuring out if we can get to the market and back in time to pick up the kids from school, are all guided by imagination. Imagination defines survival. Whether imagining that a bear might be in that cave and not going in, or imagining what a boss might do if we tell him or her or they off, imagination protects us from big and small dangers every day. Imagination defines invention. That one's a little more obvious. Inventors imagine the form and function of their creations. Scientists imagine potential outcomes from their experiments. Imagination is at the heart of invention. Imagination defines expression. Imagination fuels human expression from literature to art, dance, music, movies, performance, and even theme park imagineering. So imagination defines self, others, dreams, survival, invention, expression. Imagination belongs to us all. All right, so that brings me to the start of our discussion today, the Spark of Life, Part 3. Don't escape reality, expand reality. And I'll give you a little roadmap of where we're going because there's a lot of stuff to cover. We're going to review goals of early immersive spaces. We're going to review visions of the future in a 2008 pitch deck, so the retro future vision. We're going to review current metaverse approaches briefly, and then we're going to compare metaverse with blended reality to see if there's a distinction. I feel like there sort of is. And then I'm going to share 4 short blended reality stories to give an example of living in that kind of world. So let's dive right in. Last one, I'm going to check in with Walt, a little bookend. We sort of started with Walt in the early days of winning through philosophy, and we'll do a little last Walt check-in. So let's take a look at example of escaping reality. That was sort of a stated philosophy of Second Life. Even in the name, it wasn't your life, it was a second life that you would have in parallel. I used to hear discussions on NPR, and they would be very intrigued, and at the end they'd say, well, if you have time to kill or time to waste or whatever, let's go to the second life where you can be this other person and live a parallel life. It was some of their avatars, obviously you were in a pretend world. This is a new one though. They said, take a second look at Second Life. It's really growing up. So this was a person, and then I'll see split screen. I'll show you the avatar that they're currently bragging about. So, she becomes a very doll-like pretend fantasy version of herself. And here's some of the other current, it's sort of Kardashian doll town. It still definitely feels like an escape from reality. To me, would not feel like normal communication if I were inside of one of those avatars. And, you can kind of pick your avatar, and instead of just having you be your avatar. So that is an example of escaping reality, and from years ago. So those were the early days of shared immersive space. And now an example of expanding reality. This was a project that I was putting together with the team. You can see 2007 on the date there. We had was Bigger Life instead of Second Life. The the whole philosophy was to embrace keeping your life going, expanding and making it bigger. This was a Morgan Freeman avatar that represented the kind of goal we wanted. Yes, it is a built avatar, but it's beautiful and it's accurately him. This was a digital eye sample by Liam Kemp in the day. This was not even a real person, but was just built beautifully to look photoreal. Other avatars, this is an example where you just feel absolutely the authentic individuality of the people that would come in their avatar form. So that was our goal. And this was our sort of philosophy statement page. Bigger Life is not a game, but a real-time three-dimensional living environment. Bigger Life is a strategic alliance of technologies which allow real-life activities to flow in and out of a 3D immersive world, thereby expanding the reach and power of every individual in social, business, creative, educational, political, and leisure endeavors. Bigger Life technology is used to expand reality, not to escape reality. So that was our mission statement. I will take you through a retro future deck here. Back in the day, we put together a deck for Bigger Life, and we were talking about all the different ways it would expand your life. Then around 2008, when the economy went through the floor, various people that were looking at the deck felt like it was kind of, felt out of place, like tone deaf, to call it Bigger Life and be bragging on bigness and lavishness and everything. So I changed the name of it to, instead of Bigger Life, to Better World. It became almost like a statement of how to improve the problems that we were in. So I will take you through that. I'll do it fairly as quickly as possible, but it's interesting to look back on, in those days in 2008, 2009, what was considered a future that we might live in. So I will go back to the deck now, and we will take a look at Better World. So, Better World, the new way to be human. A powerful partnership of technology and philosophy in the service of instant and sustained human togetherness, creating global communities which are defined by shared interests rather than simply by shared geography. Removes all physical, logistical, financial, and cultural barriers that keep human beings apart, increasing engagement on a grand scale. Allows serendipity, intuition, and the spark of new thought to matter on the global scene. Decreases pollution as a natural function and on a massive scale. Decreases wasted time, wasted money, and wasted energy as a natural function and on a massive scale. Rescues technologies from tiny niche applications which earn only a quick dollar, reconfiguring them for sweeping global applications that positively impact humanity and demonstrate even more earning potential. Creates an environment in which the personal expression of character, opinion, and taste is not unfairly hindered or unfairly aided by relative wealth. The most fertile environment in which the human brain trust can use its collective energy to devise the next great global paradigm. So imagine that everyone was living in that connected world, and then what will we think up once we're in that connectedness? Dynamically addresses current environmental and economic woes. This was back when we were in the crash. So we get into the past world. We could connect via voice. Present world, back in the day, which is still the case, we connect through voice and 2D image. Here we are doing that. Better world, accurate, secure 3D projection into shared space. And I purposely used senior citizens in it because I think they would be the biggest users because they need it the most. My avatar, I called Enosh. Doron Greenstein, who was a coder that worked with me, is an Israeli genius. He said, you should figure out a way to call it Enosh because it's the third generation human in history. And so this is the sort of the third generation avatar. There was the little pixelated characters, and then there was the 3D characters that were, looked gamey, but now it really looks like you. So this is the third generation human. So I figured out Enosh does mean extant, neo, omnipresent, secure human. So I kind of did it. So the real you, this was actually an image metrics test that they did. It was the Emily project, I believe. But the one on the left is the real person. The three on the right are digital face replacement with their avatar face expressing. So it's beyond avatar as in games use and as a projection of you into the real space. So your every expression in real time, not a symbol of you, but a projection of you. So even back in the day, when Second Life was doing its thing and playing pretend, we were really leaning heavily towards individuality and accuracy. And those were some avatars that I was able to find at the time that got pretty close to representing that. This is pretty obvious. Geographical boundaries keep people with shared interests scattered, and we sort of gather them together into common interests and connect them up. But we don't just connect them up via the screens, we put you into shared immersive space. So you are digitally projected into our global community of virtual cities. The virtual reality is not designed as an escape from reality, but as an expansion of reality. And real life human activities continue with more engagement and immediacy. So as you can see, there would be cities of wellness, games, art, green, sports, movies, music, science, fantasy, etc. And again, the face on the left is the real person. The one on the right was the avatar of the day. An example of the kind of experience you'd have inside Music City. So I did this mashup of all things music to be the buildings that you might encounter if you are in Music City. Different kinds of expression that you would have even inside of Music City. If you go to like the classical area or rock or therapeutic music or opera, you'd have different places where you could put up residence and sort of live in your favorite music space. The habitat, showing that you could live in places that have most accurately reflect your taste rather than your relative wealth. And this is a very real thing, how green it could be. So on the upper half, you see the path from alone to together, taking you through gas and gridlock and pollution and fuel during air travel and the time it takes, and then gas and gridlock on the other side, and the hotel and lodging and everything. And finally, you're together. And the better world model, instantly together with more people really feeling their presence. So it's much less time and way much less pollution and money spent. And it was interesting that Magic Johnson's company went into Second Life in those early days and forced it to try to use it for this purpose. He told his people, don't play pretend, don't be fairies and centaurs and stuff. Try to look like yourself, come into the space and we're going to get real work done. And they did a study and they saved millions of dollars by doing that and actually collected together where they could do point of view seeing each other and accomplish real things. So it's actually a doable thing. Here's just how does your footprint land on the planet? So the left column going down is, normal business models. You buy prime property in the center of town so people can drive to it. A lot of cars on the road trying to cram into your parking lot. Only a few people can get in at a time because of all the crowd that's happening. The right column, your main store is virtual. So any number of people can instantly just crowd into it because it only takes a moment of their schedule to do that instead of a whole drive to and planning their day. You can have it be a beautiful architectural statement from a named architect that nobody can copy. It's your patented thing. It's your business edifice. And but do it at a fraction of the cost because you're building it virtually instead of physically. You can have tons more people come in because you don't have to wait for the drive-to and the crowded parking lot and the single store. But you can still have absolute face-to-face interaction. You can see again the Enosh avatar presence where everybody sees each other eye to eye. And then only the delivery vehicles need to drive after you make your purchases. So that prime property in the center of town you have to grab and make a horrible big parking lot in can now be a park or something like that. So much more green. This, I'll just do the cliff notes on this. This was a radical paradigm study on closing your brick and mortar physical office, doing it virtually and increasing your ability to communicate, get things done, be efficient, still have the camaraderie in shared space. And that I actually wanted to turn into a reality show and to challenge people to live in their business virtually and make it work. This one I'll go through a little bit in more detail. The personal change that would happen. It's a picture of our older son, Ian, when he was quite young. But these are real kind of numbers. So Ian used to commute 2.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, to keep a job in Los Angeles for 12.5 hours a week. He sat in his car. Each work week, he lost more than an entire work day to travel. Over the course of a year, this equated to more than 60 lost work days. So now that he's working in his Better World virtual office, he has more time to give back to himself. So that all that time, the 12.5 hours a week, go back to himself. So he's giving 5 extra hours to work. He's giving 3 extra hours to exercise and 4.5 extra hours to just hanging out with friends. And I point out that he's not spending time in gridlock, so he's less likely to get into an accident. And he's only choosing to be with the people he wants to physically, instead of having to be in the brick and mortar all the time. So less apt to get things like COVID. So reaching into the space, just a teacher being able to have a teaching moment with people that are collected from all over the world, but they decide where to sit in the room, close to the teacher or further back, next to somebody they would enjoy chatting with, et cetera. So they make the same sort of social decisions about being together in class. And then, of course, since you're in virtual space, if you're talking about galaxies, you can just put them up for people to see right in the room. For therapy, on the left, sort of reliving a situation that was very ominous for you as part of a therapy session, knowing that instantly you can change it back to something that's very comfortable for you. So using it as a therapy space. Reaching out of virtual space to real life. There's a drummer that lives too far to go do the gig tonight, so he's just projecting in. So they're using a little scrim thing to project him at the drums, but he really is playing with his band. So the rest of the band is there physically, he's there virtually, so that's a nice mix. Other ways you could reach out, we talked about smart bathrooms where, you know, it reads levels and could send it to your wellness coach, your main doctor with securely. Reaching in and out of the space, I'm shocked nobody's done this yet. You know, with important races that happen around the world, all those tracks have been exactly duplicated. So you just match it to the square inch and all the cars in virtual space. And so you could have on your device, your wall size screen, or in VR goggles or whatever, you could see real races as they are actually happening right then and have your point of view anywhere you want. You could put your car next to them and it just goes through them, but you could actually be on the track and race against the greats in a game that puts, you know, tries to put the best physics engine to work so that your car behaves as it should, and race against the greats during an actual event that's happening live. So live immersive 3D broadcasts is a thing that could be awesome. Just pointing out that augmented reality could be your friend at something like you're going to see an opera performance, and there's no bad seat in the house because you can just see the soloist as large as you want to. So Better World, technology in the service of human connectedness and growth. So that was our group. We're called Idea Studios. So now looking forward, let's take a look at blended reality. And sorry, I'm hanging in the deck for so long. It just sort of wound up that way. I'll be ducking back out momentarily. And sorry for the trash truck going by. That's a little blended reality going on right now. So, we talked about immersion equaling companionship. And so there's that whole question of what really is blended reality. And is it the same as the metaverse? Everybody's talking about the metaverse, and they have kind of different versions of it. Zuckerberg's metaverse is largely a rebranding of VR. He does acknowledge other things, but he really is trying to sell you the Oculus primarily. This is Kyle, one of my work partners, doing an experience that we had great fun with. But just a reminder that it replaces your first person point of view, which is, by the way, the default human view. So there's nothing odd about it. If it's done well, it should feel absolutely natural to you. And it shares the whole world. So it replaces everything that you're seeing. This would be his point of view. If he were in a session, like if our after discussion, we broke up and we're talking to each other, this is what you would see in that point of view, which is absolutely normal. This is hard to navigate. If you're trying to have a party with a lot of people, it's like, how do I group and talk to people? Just replace it with this, like, oh, suddenly you're all seeing from your own point of view, easy to navigate. Now you might be imagining, yeah, but everybody's going to be wearing helmets, but you don't see each other that way. This is some work that they did.
In new and unseen directions while I'm talking. You can make new expressions. All of this preserving all these new combinations of gaze and expression that we haven't seen before in the training data.
So as you can see it, yes, it's a bummer to these days still have to wear the headset, but your friend is not seeing the headset on you. They're seeing your normal face. They're doing really good work in that area. This is actually pretty remarkable. It's fairly recent. It's about 3 years old, I think. So they asked people that were going through this to really try to challenge the system with extreme expressions. So on the left side, you'll see the line moving back and forth is the real person. On the right side of that line is always the avatar. And it's amazing. So you can see it's really keeping up. So that's actually a preordained scanned avatar that they're driving. So it's reading their face expressions and moving the avatar in the immersive space. And all their eccentric wriggling is protected. So Microsoft Metaverse, on the other hand, rather than being VR-centric, is largely a rebranding of AR. And they're trying to sell you the HoloLens, but they're doing Microsoft Mesh, which does acknowledge the other things in a sort of a multi-reality environment, but they're really AR-centric. Here's a friend of mine, Corey, and I doing a test with an AR baby Groot before we built the physical baby Groot. And he really could see us in the environment and react to us. But since we were both wearing that AR headset, we could see him. And just a reminder that this adds to first-person point of view. It doesn't replace the point of view. It just adds him. In this case, it's only adding Groot to that first-person point of view. And it shares the object, but not the world. So we happen to have been in the same room when we did this. So we both saw him in that space. But if Corey had been in his apartment during the same experience, we both still would have seen Groot and been able to interact with Groot, but he would have seen him standing in his apartment while I would have seen him at work. So that's how AR works. This is just a little bit back in 2011. I directed the first augmented reality postage stamp official. And this is a little presentation of that and a hidden app that we did for John F. Kennedy stamp as well. And so this is just an example of how we were pushing back in the day for AR to be dimensional. Hello. Some of you were curious about our augmented reality piece of Oni the dog for Smithsonian. This is the stamp image they just released. You can use the stamp itself or a printout at any size to launch our app. You'll see Oni the dog appear as a very three-dimensional little character. As he jogs along, you hear all of his little tags jingling. If you know anything about Oni, that's very much his trademark. We actually have a new story of Oni coming out, illustrated by Fred Klein. Our Maya animator on this was Jeff Clifton, and Ian Rees did the music. I happen to know him quite well. We also have a JFK stamp augmented piece. Again, you can use the stamp itself or a printout at any size to launch the app. You see a television of the era with Kennedy giving one of his speeches.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
The TV turns into a lunar lander.
Because that challenge is one that we're willing
and then our astronaut shows up.
One we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
If you get close enough, you can see he has a reflection in his visor, which is very cool. All right, so that was an example of our 2011 efforts in AR. And also, this is back then that you could have the AR be of a human being. This was a 3D reconstruction of somebody ballroom dancing, I guess. But a company had sent it to us and it could track to a marker. And so, AR could definitely be each other if we chose to do that. So blending of VR and AR is my own obsession. So I'll take you through an example of that. So this is kind of, Zuckerberg and Microsoft's universes meeting. So this person is enjoying a beautiful sunset and she wants her friend to experience it. So what she wants is to bring her friend there through AR. So she just wants to keep her whole world intact, but only add one thing, her friend. So for their solution, AR is perfect for her. Now her friend, who she added through AR, happens to be in an apartment building when she got the call and said, hey, oh my God, you got to see this beautiful sunset. Now she doesn't want AR. She doesn't want to add her friend in her apartment. She wants to replace her whole world. So she wants this to happen. She wants the entire world to change. So for her, VR is the solution. So for the two of them to have this wonderful experience where they can just hang out together, watch the sun go down, blending VR and AR was better than either tool alone. So what really is blended reality then? To me, blended reality is the metaverse plus. There's so many choices beyond just the main tools that people talk about that we should take a look at. There's reality, virtual reality, augmented reality, mobile devices, projections, games, PCs, AI, and even more. So let's just go through some examples of those things that we would want to blend in this blended space. There are a new definition of projections. This is something that we did. It's just a tiny peek into some of the innovation that we did. It was an early test for something where I was projecting on this person. Okay, there you go. And as you can see, it completely obeys her movements and just stays glued to her. She's not trying to match it. It's completely following her. So the idea that you could do something that sort of trippy and psychedelic as an alteration of a person and how they fit into the space through projection, nobody had to wear goggles. Nobody had to wear AR or VR or anything. It's just reality and you see her, and through projection, it's magical. New definition of screens. This was a building that I designed for a group called Interplex. The whole side of the building I intended to be curved screens that could show you any number of things, including an event like this might be the tag artist, Retina, well, he's beyond tag, but Retina doing a live painting of his sort of amazing calligraphy, etc. So the building could just be this chameleon in a giant dramatic theatrical way. And inside, the sort of X-ray view shows that there's more projectable curved spaces and spherical theater. So inside that sphere, there's actually shows going on for people and then other theaters. But if you watch the little group of people on the ground, you'll see that they stay there and just the room evolves into the next wonderful thing that they need to experience. And it's just infinite variety of how you can immerse people. And now nobody here is having to wear any sort of gear. It's just the world itself is the giant headset, if you will. So then it can do a countdown outside the theater to the next start of the next spherical show. You can, with your own mobile device, be throwing your pictures up into the space as well and having a fun party where it could be tracking you. So you're finding other friends that are there and it's helping guide you to each other in the party, etc. And if you have something like in another space in this building, a live Beyonce concert going on outside in the building, it could be a live coverage of the concert going on inside the building as well. So just thinking about screens and buildings and architecture in whole new ways. And then new screens plus AI combinations where you could be having a dining experience with a screen that lets you dine with other characters that you know and love. So the table extends into their side in the media, and you have fun playing games with them, interacting. And in the physical world, you bring things in reality for them to see, and in their media world, they respond through AI and various sensors in the room so that they react to what you're showing them and telling them. So really fun dining experiences. Also, since space plus screens plus AI, Say on a ship, the stateroom would know that you're coming and put your family name on the door as you arrive, so you feel welcomed when you come in. And also, kid happens to be a big fan of the T-Rex from Toy Story, so the whole wall media, he waddles over and says, greets the kid, and the kid brings up his little Woody doll, which is also AI driven. And the two characters can have a conversation with each other and talk about the kid and the fun voyage they're going to have, and maybe help the kid be more brave about being out at sea if he's afraid of water, et cetera, so they can be companions to the parents. Robotics plus AI. I was telling Tina that I just saw on LinkedIn that there was an announcement in the New York Times about this. It said, "Are you ready for sentient Disney robots?" And so I was creative lead on that for several years. So, we had it grow up into the first of an infinite amount of characters. But you can imagine a situation where you might have a sentient robotic bartender. And so he can be talking to you and be dexterous enough to pour drinks, but also be aware of other things that are going on in the room like you are. Somebody cheers over something that happened at another table. Be able to quickly identify who needs an order taken. Also just having a life of its own, so that when nobody's asking it to do anything, it has those sort of little eccentricities that we teach it. So, and we might program randomness into it so that it is sort of obsessed with cleaning all the spots up the glasses and aligning them perfectly, or whatever we give it as a little proof of its life, little spark of life. And also just to be a great listener, to listen to your stories and to be able to chime in and just be a really good listener, but still be aware of other people when they need things. And of course, getting around very quickly. In this case, I was suggesting that we just slide along a track with the hidden legs so it can very quickly accommodate everybody without ever falling over. And this was an interesting thing. Avatar of you, and we've talked about this, but just a reminder that when you go into shared space, that your accurate avatar would be used for communication for whatever purpose you want. And I was just struck by the work that Ellen Page did a few years ago in a game called Beyond Two Souls, and then some work in The Last of Us around that same time. So I put together this show and tell reel, and you'll see in the first half, Ellen Page getting scanned, turned into the avatar that represents her. So that was the relevant part. It's like they didn't make her into someone else. It was Ellen Page as herself. And it was one of the first games that actually had her listed as being in it. It wasn't like doing the voice of or something. It's like she's in it. So that was significant. And then about halfway through, it switches to another actress who was in The Last of Us. But once it starts that second half, watch for the text that I put on the screen. It guides you through the fact that this is happening without a script one day, that it will happen live, that it will be you accurately projected so it looks and sounds like you drive it. This is not a pretend proxy of you, it's a projection of you into shared space, and you can talk about whatever you want with your friends, and it'll change how the world works. So let's watch this little promo reel from several years back, and we will see. Yes, here we go. I called it Digital Me.
I know how you feel.
You know nothing about how I feel! You hear me? Nothing!
Goodbye, Nathan. I hope you find peace.
Watch yourself out there, Jody. I don't want anything to happen to you.
We still have time before I go, right?
So your decision is made? You're leaving?
There's just things that I have to work out. Things from my past. I think I'm ready to face them now.
Hey, wait. Back in Boston, back when I was bitten, I wasn't alone. My best friend was there. And she got bit too. We didn't know what to do. So, she says, let's just wait it out. You know, we can be all poetic and just lose our minds together. I'm still waiting for my turn.
Ellie.
Her name was Riley, and she was the first to die. And then it was Tess. And then Sam.
None of that is on you.
Oh, you don't understand.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And you... No matter what, you keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
I was worried. They're looking for you.
I had to run away. I had no choice.
All right, so that was a flavor of thinking about Ellen or any of us just representing ourselves during conversation, and that it just so happened that that scene from The Last of Us felt very genuine, and I thought that represented what the conversation someone might have had that was real. So just a quick revisit to Avatar expression fidelity. There's some remarkable work going on. I showed you the work from Zuckerberg and Facebook where there was the split screen of an avatar. This really impressed me. It was happening at 2018 GDC, and someone was doing a live drive. She was wearing the gear to track. And they actually they had built an avatar called Siren, and it was a slightly different visual than the actress driving it. I wish they had just done a one-to-one. But the thing I want you to watch for is, people talk about uncanny valley and creepiness and everything. If you watch the eyes as it goes forward, it will zoom in close to the eyes on the screen behind her. And in real time, she just is chatting away, and the eyes do the most natural, beautiful expression following along with her. And it's easy to imagine just looking into those eyes and feeling comfortable with no creep factor. And so take a look as they zoom in.
To the camera, does all this realism actually hold up? Like, does it hold up?
Unless that was so rude, I can't even answer. I'm joking. Alfred, if you just want us to closer and have a look. In some ways, it holds up even better closer to the camera, as you can actually see each and every tiny hair and pore of my skin. All of those hairs are combined, and they look of over 100,000 polygons. Now that's the kind of detail I'm talking about this year, which, well, wouldn't usually show people. I'll make an exception, just for today.
Well, thank you very, very much for
So as you can see, it's just a beautiful eye expression, very natural. And so now that brings us to, now that we sort of look at the palette of things that are available in blended reality that go beyond just VR and AR, but include many, many choices. I'll take you through a few short stories. Expanding closeness, the first story gets into. Expanding real estate, second one. Expanding escape rooms, and the last one, expanding teleportation. What? Yes. So let's dive in. The first one, expanding closeness. Now, I was inspired by Tiny Klein. This is an actual person in history. She, in the 1930s, was doing daring things, like she bit onto that device. It's almost like a tooth guard that somebody would wear boxing, but she held onto it and then dangled only by her teeth to do zip lines across, over New York City and various other places. And Walt hired her to be Tinkerbell when she was 71 years old. So she did her first flights at 71, but she was a daring person. There's a club of people, women like her. Gina Rock is another woman who was with the circus first and then was hired to fly over the park as Tinkerbell. And she actually was brave enough to fly. What's his name? There was Eisner and Frank Wells. She actually flew Frank Wells into a stockholders meeting, sort of gliding him into the show on a wire. Eisner was a little too chicken to join in, but Frank Wells, the mountain climber, was happy to fly with her. So these are wonderful, adventurous people. And so in my story that I did for exploring for Disney and other people how to look forward with blended reality, I thought, well, what if you take one of those people who had this amazing career and she's thinking, I still want to be part of the magic, even though it's very hard for me to get to the park. So I did a story about her grandchild having a party at Disneyland, and she can't go physically. So we deal with how blended reality helps that happen. So I started with imagining her at home with her AI companion character, of course, Tinkerbell. And I don't know if you've seen, they have little devices now where you can look into, I think it's called Looking Glass is one of them, but it's almost like a crystal block. And inside you swear there's a 3D character existing. So she would choose Tinkerbell as her AI companion to help her remember things and get around the house. So she has her walker. So Tinkerbell reminds her that it's book time for her granddaughter. And she does a little pantomime of opening the book and jingling sound and reminds her it's book time. So she gets up and uses her walker to head towards the granddaughter's room. And Tinkerbell goes ahead and turns on, with the smart system in the house, turns on the lights to make sure that it's safe for her to walk down the hallways. And while she's reading the book, Tinkerbell just appears in the smart TV and makes sure the TV is off for book time, but puts it to sort of a neutral screensaver of just something that fits the book. So if she's reading about Frozen, it's just a beautiful forest. That will just be ambience for book time and the reading and paying attention to the words. As Grandma's reading along with her granddaughter, Olaf, who's another little AI character, it's her favorite little character, is just also helping encourage the reading by being impressed when the little girl reads sentences and just is very impressed. Certain keywords, like if the girl reads about, and then it started to snow, Tinkerbell will go with her wand, add a little falling snow to the beautiful background on the wall. So there are sort of rewards for reading well, for increasing vocabulary. There's these little perks that show up to help that happen. So that's the kind of household that Grandma lives in. And the next morning, it's the granddaughter's birthday, and they're all excited because they're going to go to Disneyland together. And they make a plan. They bring up a map of Disneyland and they do a little AR to pick, well, I want to go on this ride and this ride. And they pop up in 3D, the ones they choose. And Tinkerbell does a little thing to pick all the rides they've chosen and then to curate them into a timeline, because they're not just going to wander through the park. There will actually be a driverless vehicle it seems to be driven by AI characters. So Olaf, her favorite character, can pretend to drive them around the park. And it takes people, the system takes people, everybody that's chosen that set of rides that day, and has put them in a certain order that makes the most sense so they get more accomplished. They have more attractions per day. And so they'll drive them there, and the AI character knows exactly that it needs to take 4.5 minutes to get there, or 8 minutes, and fill it with drive around a little bit more, give it a little bit more of a show and tell, small talk with people in the car, but you seem to arrive without any delay, exactly on time. So you go in. So they make that sort of curated plan ahead of time, and they get ready and go out to get in the car. And of course, grandma stops at the edge of the porch with her walker and doesn't continue to the car as the family gets in. And the little granddaughter comes back and goes, "Oh, grandma, I want you to go with us." And she goes, "Oh, don't worry, sweetie, I'll catch up." So the girl gets in the car and they go to the park, and sure enough, the tram is there and various other families pile on, and Olaf, one of our sentient robots that the New York Times just announced we are making, drives that whole group of people to the various attractions. Well, one that grandma really enjoyed and picked and wanted to do with her granddaughter and daughter was the Haunted Mansion. So remember I mentioned AR, VR mix. Well, this is one of those examples where it's the perfect opportunity where the daughter and granddaughter get on to the Haunted Mansion. And for them, they just want AR. They want to keep everything they're looking at to be intact, but they only want to add one thing: grandma sitting between them. So for them, AR is the ticket. Back in their home, grandma's sitting in her comfy chair. She doesn't want to see the house at all. She wants to be inside the park with them. She wants to be part of the magic. So she puts on the headset and she's completely in the Haunted Mansion, and she looks to her left and it's her daughter, to her right is her granddaughter. So the AR, VR blended reality makes it happen, and they have a wonderful time, and the giggles and the laughs and the screams. And the grandson, who's off at college, he found out that they were going to be on the ride, and he projected in and did a little boo amongst the ghosts. So he added himself in, so he even shows up to be part of the fun. So then next, the little girl wants to go play, what is it called? Hero's Duty, which was from Wreck-It Ralph. There's that arcade game, right? Well, in the story, in the film, there was a girl playing in the arcade. So she, for real, wants to go in and play. So they need a little step stool to be high enough for her to reach. So for her, no video, no AR or VR helmet or anything. She's just in a real arcade, standing at the arcade controls and looking at a screen, and her mom is there to help her. And they're having fun starting to play the game. Well, inside the screen, the dad, he loves to run around like the void, the runaround, or the virtual room, where you put on the VR goggles and you have a battery backpack and your little system riding with you. You can run around. So he's in the screen of Hero's Duty. He is actually running around in the adjoining building. And so when the little girl is, jousting with him, he's actually having to run around and sweat in order to keep up with her. And so they're having a great time together. And when the dad looks in his space, just like in the film, his daughter is projected onto a little droid that's rolling around as a screen, and it shows her face right then in real time. There's a little camera on the arcade game that picks up her expression. So they're looking at each other eye to eye. He's completely in that world wearing armor. She's in the arcade, but he perceives her inside of the game on the top of that little droid, and they're having fun together. And then the son, who's off at college, just wants to jump in with his PlayStation. So he's using his controllers and sort of having a field day in there, but he's driving the avatar that looks like him, and he's talking with them. And then grandma, she has the most kick-ass solution where her comfy chair, she can like scoot back in it, and in the VR space, it looks like a rocket chair. So, and she is wearing her VR helmet and completely replaces her house with now being in Hero's Duty game. So she knows that as she's driving her rocket chair around in that space, her son-in-law is running around wearing the gear and sweating, and her granddaughter and daughter are in the arcade having fun giggling at the screen, playing together. So it's just, they're all together, all playing. And by the way, Tinkerbell is now inside of the game helping grandma. So she's like giving her a little extra boost in how she's able to survive longer and sort of get more points, because Tinkerbell, her little AI companion, goes with her into that space as well. And so they have a great time together doing that. Later, as it's getting evening, they're back riding on the vehicle, and it's kind of magic hour. Grandma's sitting between her daughter and granddaughter and son-in-law, and the girl says, "Oh, it's going to be the fireworks soon," and grandma says, "Oh, I have to go get ready. I'm going to fly tonight." And she says, "What?" She goes, "Oh, I'm going to see from up there." So she she connects through VR to the person that's actually doing the flight tonight because she wants to be back on the cable. So they actually, and thousands of people could do it. Anybody who wants to fly over the park can put on the VR and just totally see through the eyes of the person who is actually doing the cable flight that night. So grandma gets to look down and see her granddaughter and just relive the glory days. So anyway, that's grandma and her still being part of the magic. Sorry, that always gets to me that she gets to fly again. Now I will show you the next thing, expanding real estate. So now we take a look at something like Batu. And, you know, this is the fantasy of what it would be like if the planet continued beyond, but in reality, in the theme park, it's a piece of land that's, you know, very finite. It has its edges, and then it becomes other things that betray that it's not part of that world. Well, we could have people in the park and at home swear that all of the space beyond it is actually there and is usable and is real. And we can do it by teaming up with this little guy, which is one of the sentient autonomous droids. And so I will take you through how that works. So when we were testing the droids, it was really fun. We used to try to see how they were surviving as they were going around through a crowd. So, you know, you spend a few minutes looking through their point of view, through their lens. And so you could see them trying to get through a crowd and somebody coming up to look at, you know, right in its face or putting a camera. Some people goofing off with it or posing to take selfies with it. So, you know, we were trying to see what is it like to be in its experience path. So in the future, you could see yourself going into a place like that. You're totally into that world. And the little droid comes up to you that fits that universe, in this case, the Star Wars universe, but it could work for anything. And it says, hey, you want to help me do a mission? I need several of you to help me. You're not allowed to go out into the Badlands, but I am. I can go out there and there's treasure to be found, but I need somebody to help be my navigator. I need somebody to help to fend off the bad guys that there's creepy aliens that are out there, etc. So I need several of you to connect up with me and help me get this accomplished because I can't do it alone. So they put on their headsets and you can see, he says, I'll give you the feed. So he gives you the live feed that's actually through its lens. So it turns and looks at you and you're like, oh, damn, that is me. It's like, it is the live feed right now. And it looks around at the crowd and looks at your family and everybody that's gathered around. And yep, that's the live feed. I am seeing through its real eyes right now, the little physical droid. Now that feed is also projected up onto a big screen that's above the crowd. So hundreds and hundreds of people can enjoy watching this adventure unfold. It's not just relegated to the person in the helmet. So several people join in to do that adventure. Now the little bot rolls away from you out into the Badlands where you're not allowed to go. It goes through a little, bots only exit, and it's trundling out towards the mountains. And it turns around and looks back at you and waves, and you see its point of view. It's like, yep, that's us. And we wave that's the live feed of us. Then it goes through a cave and you see it go down into the dark, and its point of view keeps going. It goes into the cave, and then you see light of where it's going through towards another exit out the other side of the mountain into the Badlands, and it just never breaks. Now, reality is we have shifted to a beautifully rendered virtual version of all of that. The physical space doesn't exist out there, but we are telling your brain it absolutely does. So without any perceivable break, just the point of view continues on out into that space. You encounter all kinds of space aliens, and you have to get around traps, and somebody's helping it to dig in the ground to get the relic that it said it was going to find. Somebody else is trying to fend off attackers. You could call to the son-in-law in this case, who's off of college, and go, I need your help. I'm out here in the Badlands. Can you please connect in and also participate? And they've got some cameras out there that will let you, they've got some drones that can fly around and let you see the live feed. So everybody gets the message that it's live feeds from the Badlands. But people can join in then from game platforms, etc., and everybody participates in this mission. Now, in your point of view, there's a situation that comes up where there's an alien creature that's approaching, and you have to fire rockets at it. And you do get the rockets off in time and they explode in the point of view, right? In real life, at the park, you hear the explosion, boom, happen beyond the mountain where it went, and you see a big plume of smoke come roiling up into the sky. And so it tells you it's real, it's happening. I heard the explosion, I saw the smoke, not only through the lens, but in real life, there it is, the wind is blowing the smoke away. So now it successfully pick up the relic that you dug out of the ground. It comes rolling back through the cave in through the darkness. Now, in the meantime, it's gotten dinged, it's gotten bitten, it's gotten burned by different things that happen along the way. Now, in real life, we have a identical bot with damages that is waiting to take over for it. But still, the point of view tells you unbroken point of view, continuity continues. It rolls out now into view. Sure enough, it looks on the point of view like he's approaching the entrance. Yep, there he is. He's rolling out into the light. Here he comes. Oh, look at all the damages, bite marks on him and stuff, and he's smoking. So he comes up and carries the relic that you watched through this unbroken real-time event. You dug this relic out of the ground, hands it to you, and it's got sand on it. And you now take the physical thing and it's your keepsake to take home. And maybe if you do a number of these missions, you can put these pieces together and make some kind of cool compass or who knows what, a weird alien weapon or whatever. So these kind of missions that completely take it from physical, stepping into a virtual realm, but still tell you all the time, the messaging is this never stops being real. And you give extra validation of the authentic reality during the whole experience. I think it would just be trippy. And people would then look at the map and believe the bigger map. It's like, well, I've been there. That's not a parking lot. That's the Badlands. And this is like, I've been out there. And you can repeat your visits to that. So it becomes a usable space where, by the way, you can have people have experiences from outside the park too that are projecting themselves in to participate, which means participation beyond how many people you can cram into a park. So there's physical participation beyond the berm, which is selling more tickets than you could ever sell if you just had to make it only the physical participants. So now I should go back to my deck and jump to the next one. Oh, some people want to do this. I want to do this. Okay, next up, expanding escape rooms. I used just this one example, but there's a myriad. Imagine that you're in an escape room and you are in the theme park. So you're going through this and there's the bell jar there with the rose in it from Beauty and the Beast. Your friend is at home, but you actually need, both of you need to participate in order to make this even happen. So the example is, I'm physically there in the park, right? Tina, you're the one that's participating from the room you're in right now. But I am in the escape room and it's beautifully styled and it's the Beauty and the Beast mansion and I see the bell jar and I have to somehow, without disturbing the bell jar, get the rose out and put it in a little vase by a door to open a door. It's like a lock puzzle. And I can't do it. It's like I try to move it, it's glued down, it won't let me get through the glass. The rose is in the center, tantalizing me, and I cannot get it, and I'm stuck in this space. I'm seeing you there through AR. So I've done the choice that the woman made on the beach, where everything I'm seeing is real except for you. You're my AR companion. I add you. At home, you are VR. You completely have replaced your entire room with being in the escape room with me. So you can look around at everything, all the clues. You see the rose starting to glow in your point of view, and it's sort of teasing you, and it's doing a little music to guide you, and you go over and you try, and you're not physically there. So I see your hand just goes through the glass, and you're able to get the rose, and you pull it right through the glass, and you go and you put it in the vase by the door, and the door opens for me physically, and I can move on. I couldn't do it unless you were my friend who could go through the physical thing, get the next puzzle solved. So you're not just a extra eyes along or like, oh, I was there too. I needed you in order to get through the escape room. So imagine just multiplying that idea times a billion and you have a thing. So that's another one. Let me go back to this again. Expanding teleportation. Okay, this one's fun. This discussion really happened. So you are using VR together in the theme park. You know it. It's just it's a very blank room. It's just kind of a white room. And it has two VR helmets sitting there. And you put the helmets on, so both of you are next to each other. And I put on my helmet, you put on yours, and oh, suddenly, oh man, we're in Halo Infinity, whatever it might be. And oh, look at all my armor. It's just amazing. And we've got these weapons, and there's this whole world around us. And suddenly we get in this tough jam, and I have to make a decision, or you have to make a decision. And so one of us is going to save the other one. There's a projectile coming, and the only way to save them is to teleport them. You do have that capability, is to teleport them away before the missile hits where they're standing. And so sure enough, you teleport your friend to save her. And when you remove your VR headset, your friend is gone. You're back in the white room, and your friend is not in the room with you. And you arrive together, and you put the helmets on, and you're in the room. Your friend removes her VR headset and finds herself in a different room. So teleportation is real? That's the question. So this happened because I actually was given a puzzle where someone invented a way to move you. And it's I believe it's a patent now, but you could be moved on a floor. So then there's any number of ways to do it, but this was one way. And they said, well, okay, what would you do with a floor that could move people? And so I said, well, I would do this. I would have two people like make a big show out of you are together in a blank room doing VR. Just acknowledge you're not in a big built world. You're just there together. When you put the helmets on, and I then map you to be maybe 8 feet apart, 6 feet apart, maybe 8 feet apart. And so every time you look over at your friend, you see them right there. When you hear their voice, it's mapped into your headset exactly where they're supposed to be. And you go through the adventure. Now, I am slowly sneaking one of you further and further away. But on the mapping, I just keep you exactly locked. So you just trust physically, you stood there, you don't see any evidence that you could move. And I keep telling you every time you look over, yep, your friend's right where you thought they'd be. Of course, you have no reason to doubt that. But I'm slowly taking you down the hall to another room and like putting you in another spot. So at the very end, you go teleport, game over, take the headset off. An instant before you hit teleport, you both of you believe you were right there. At the moment of teleportation, the key is you want instantly after you see in the VR, the dissolve happen. Immediately, game over, take the helmet off. Gone, the person is gone. So that kind of trick where you play with people's heads, and then of course they talk to people in the space and you go, well, they teleported you. That's why you're in a different room. And so you never talk about how it happened. You just, then they go like, but how did that happen? It's like, well, didn't you teleport him? It's like, that's how it happened. So anyway, that was a discussion. It didn't turn into a thing yet, but I would like it to. So just a few last things. Use blended reality to fill theme parks with more people than would ever physically fit there. Sell more tickets, make more millions. Give your fans a vivid shared experience. And in the meantime, create global immersive communication while you're at it. It's the same stuff, just used for different purposes. And by the way, it changed the world. And this is just a note that Walt would approve. I checked. And by that, I mean, I actually got into a conversation with some people in the company. And, I was really on my soapbox advocating for change the world. It's the same stuff. Like while you're building the park, build communication, have people be together. And certain people really admonished me and said, we're not a communication company. And I would bring up Walt, and I'd bring up like, well, what about the first plans for what Epcot was going to be? Experimental prototype community of tomorrow, different kinds of transportation, different kinds of energy, different kinds of education plans, and all of that. And they would just go, oh, it was just for entertainment purposes. It was just a story to tell to entertain people to be in the park. It's like he didn't think beyond that. So I, at the time, had just been made an executive. I was an executive R&D Imagineer, right? And I went, this is the one time I'm going to use my executive title to get something. So I actually, as an executive, I sent a request to the Disney archives and just said, what was Walt's attitude that you can find from real documentation? Was he doing all of that, including talking about the future at Epcot and building monorails and stuff like that? Was it all purely to be theme park entertainer, or did he actually think about changing how the world works and how people live beyond that? Which was, by the way, in the stories that he would tell, he would talk about that. That's why he was doing the experiments. So I said, was it BS or was it real? And I did. And so there actually, I'm sure, were like charge numbers used and people were paid to research this question for me. And I wish I could find the papers after I did, we all did our exodus during COVID and everything. I can't find the document now, but it was detailed and it was long and it had multiple quotes from him. And they said it started with him thinking that it was a way to entertain people in the parks. And it evolved into something where he felt a great responsibility to use these inventions to actually make the world a better place. And that he absolutely did express that clearly in multiple ways. And they had quotes that were taken during meetings and stuff made publicly. So they said it started with him imagining it was for one thing and then realized it grew into something much bigger, which I think is the process we're all going through with this stuff. But I was just happy to be able to say that it's something that Walt would have applauded for us to be doing and not seen it as a detour, which I think some people were saying that I was trying to cause a detour to happen, and I think it was not. But anyway, I would say thank you very much for going through this session. And now I would like to open it up to anything you might have to say. How long was that? How long did I go?
It was magnificent. Thank you.
Oh,
I think we're, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Made our minds move.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't sure how long it was going to be. I was still working on it till like 1 o'clock in the morning. Going like, I should put this, I should put this, I should put this. And then I went, I should sleep sometime.
I am recently experiencing, putting together this event that CTN does. And this is just mind blowing because I'm specifically dealing with trying to do something in the real world and then trying to do something for people who aren't able to come to a physical building. And this was just mind blowing.
Well, it's exciting because I'm next week actually am talking to the founder of a VR company that's great. I should probably keep identities private at the moment, but it's somebody that I've known for years who's in a preeminent VR company. And we're, I teased him with, would you like to talk about VR, AR combos of things that could accomplish what neither one alone could? And he's like, oh, cool, amazing. Let's talk. So we actually have a discussion that's happening next week. It's nice because it's somebody that's a founder of a company that is recognized globally for doing that, at least the VR part. And I'm like, well, how would you like to dive bravely into the blended reality universe with AR, VR things? There's so many things. I brought that up with somebody's head of the technology division for Disney. And he shepherds things from after they go through R&D into growing up and becoming a stable product that can go out into the world. And I brought up that Microsoft, like I say, is doing some experiments with Microsoft Mesh, but he just said, as far as the complete marriage of them, and in the beach example or the grandmother and granddaughter in the park example, where they both really each needs a different tool together to make a thing happen. That I haven't seen them aggressively do that. And he was saying that he just thought it was a matter of somebody having the will to push it together, that it was achievable. and that there were people tiptoeing around it, but nobody had sort of declared this is AR VR combo is a thing in like a real clear way to make it a system. So hopefully we can get through some of that. But as you could see with like projections, like projecting on people and on having screens on architecture, there's all kinds of ways where, you know, as I look through people that are touting their products, it typically somebody gets left out. And it's like, oh, well, if you don't have any gear, you're not even going to participate in this. So to say, well, what about you can do projection and media screens and all kinds of stuff too that don't require any helmet. So let's say that you had, for the beach example, the first person sitting on the beach uses AR, so they put on the AR glasses and they see their friend added there and they can have a nice talk. The friend at home, VR, so they completely fill the world and have a nice talk. Now there could be a third person who doesn't have either headset, but they just have a big screen like wall media. And, you know, they're making 3D LED. It's interesting, they're getting into 3D LED units. But so that third person could be wearing neither of those devices, but just chatting with them and see them in their big wall media. And either 2D or stereoscopic 3D, depending on if they want to at least put on the 3D glasses. But so you can welcome more people into that experience. And of course, that person's avatar could be represented easily into the AR and VR that the other two people are wearing. So her visibility is easy to add in.
So that what you were saying, it made me think, it was my question anyway. And then do you think it'll ever get to a point when it could just be like sunglasses and you could literally take people hiking with you? Like older people on camping trips where it's not like a big thing. It's just like a light pair of sunglasses.
Yes, yes, it's going to get better and better. And I think back and, you know, I remember back when I used to have a crappy little radio, transistor radio, just before any of you were born. But, you know, the Beatles, I was glad they didn't wait to write Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds until I had a great stereo. I had a crappy little radio and it was still a great song. So my system eventually grew up to be wonderful, and then it was ready to play the song better, but they went ahead and created the content first. So I think we need to stumble ahead, even though the technology is pretty cumbersome right now, and it will, because people are absolutely drooling after the solution you're talking about. It's like the lightweight, easy to use things, and even there's dreams of contact lens type solutions as well. It's eventually going to happen, but I think the key is to bravely try to inhabit the space with people that are using it for these purposes, and then as the technology gets more easy to use, it will already have a big base that's ready to just embrace it.
It's just like you said about Walt and his idea about the future. It reminds me of when they did the Sleeping Beauty preview, and he had people use their stereo and the TV as or not their stereo, their radio and the TV as a stereo track.
Right.
So if you tuned into a station, it was the left channel, and then your TV was the right channel, and you could set up an actual stereo field in your house before stereos even existed. So he was always. People are crazy to think that he wasn't ever just obsessed with pushing things just to push them, not to make money, because he was losing money in that sense all the time.
Yeah, and I also think that just thinking that he only imagined it existing inside of the Disneyland berm or the Disney World as that happened, or Epcot, I think that's also naive. I think that there was every intention for it to spill out into the rest of the world.
Totally.
It was just it's just a use case. I remember, I don't know, I just remember way back when they had the Carousel of Progress in its original form in Disneyland. And there was the little model of Epcot that you would see on the exit ramp. So when I was a kid, I would look through, and in being short as a kid, I would sort of be eye view with the city, and they had little airplanes coming down on strings and stuff and landing. And I remember just being mesmerized by that. And then many, many years later, I had directed a number of things especially in the Florida park. And our kids were curious, and they're 5 years apart. So our oldest one he was like 7 and our youngest was about 2. But we finally just went as tourists to the park so they could see, like, what do you do, Daddy? So they could go see some of the attractions. But our little guy, our 2-year-old, just was the most mesmerized by the monorail of anything. He was just like, monorail. You'd see it in the distance, and like that was just his favorite thing. So there's something about invention and stuff spilling out in the world that just, when there's things that just captivate us that go beyond entertainment into just spilling out into our lives. And I think somehow that's just that futuristic stuff that's usable and not just flashy and for novelty there's just something really solid about that. I think that's why Tesla has found traction, because everybody was talking about electric cars for a long time, and just the fact that he made it so immediately tangible, usable for so many people, and did it in a form factor that looked more like normal, that sort of a classy look to it, just got it out there. And I think a lot of that stuff is going to continue to happen. It's just inevitable. I hear his great fears about AI. Like, he's notorious for talking about that it's more dangerous than nuclear weapons and stuff. And
really,
yeah, he's really
interesting.
You can look up. It's so interesting. I went and looked at one day, so a couple of years ago, I went to look up TED Talks and other kind of talks about AI. And there was an equal amount you could look up to say, it's the most wonderful thing, it'll change the world for the better, like, yay, it's here. And then other people out, it's the worst thing ever, it'll ruin the world, it'll destroy humanity. It's like, and you could just watch them back to back, and it's like, it's great, it's horrible, it's great, it's horrible. And Musk is definitely on the side of it's the most dangerous thing ever to happen to humanity. And which goes back to where he goes is where I've been in my pitch deck for a long time. It's like, when he gives all these warnings, he goes to, therefore, regulation, responsible design, all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, I've been asking college students to get inside of that Trojan horse of the, entertainment in the guise of changing how communication works, and be responsible about AI and empathy, bigotry, therapy, like the big issues, and to grapple with that stuff right away. And so, but at his level, I'm sure he's seeing a lot of people that are just in it for the money that aren't paying attention to any of that, and it makes him scared. And I don't blame him, but that's why, A, I think we need responsibility, and B, the kind of people that I'm dealing with are thinking about it on a whole different level, as we talked about before, not like an omnipresent big system that's dominating the world, but individual characters that have beautiful eccentricity of individuality that goes beyond archetype, and that builds one-to-one bonding with any number of people, like bonding friendships over time. That's an entirely different, radically different proposal of what AI even is than systems to drive armies. Yeah.
I have a question, Jared. Do you see a timeline of what Zachary was asking about, glasses? I feel like it wasn't too long ago where computers were the size of Volkswagens. It was in my lifetime. But do you have a sense of the timeline of what maybe Zachary was describing?
It's very hard to know. There's always kind of unexpected leaps forward occasionally, and a lot of waiting and not getting it. It's so interesting when I'm like, right now I'm dealing with another point of innovation. It just came from an opportunity to design an experience, and I started messing with, what if we did this and this and this, and a number of people that are fairly big players in the world with doing CG and immersive experience and real-time game and stuff like that, started to get involved just as collaborators. And it sort of led to the realization, like last week, that it sort of equals up like a patentable new thing that we should really aggressively tackle and try to make so in the near future. But it evolved out of something else, where opportunity to design an experience. What if we do XYZ during that experience? And it suddenly has emerged as something that 4 different companies are really intrigued by at the new patent level. I couldn't have predicted that happening if the first request of like, hey, you want to come direct an experience, if that hadn't come to me, I don't know if it would have started the wheels turning, where I go, oh, now that I have this opportunity to go in and create something, oh, why don't I put this there? And I don't know if I would have thought of that 6 months later or 2 years later. And also like the animation magic show, like I told you, that one with the drawing, the freehand drawing, and then it's mapped into the show, that was like 12, 13, 14 years from trying to push that until it finally found a home. Other things like, electric cars, like almost a thing, not a thing, hybrids kind of, it's like, and then suddenly Tesla's everywhere. I was like, they were, my parking lot when I was at Disney were filled with Teslas. I felt like I suddenly didn't want to get one because I would just be like everybody else.
Wow.
So, but who knew that was just going to suddenly
Yeah.
happen? Or who knew that rockets were going to suddenly be able to land again instead of dropping into the ocean or just disintegrating?
Brilliant.
It's like suddenly it's happening. So you can't predict. But Zachary is exactly right that the desire to move away from the horrible headsets to really lightweight gear that you can forget about, that you want to be able to forget about it and do what you're saying, which is, I remember years ago having somebody, I was in one of the few times I went to France, I got to go, and working on the Paris park, but I had some time to myself and I went to the Louvre, and I was taking videos everywhere inside the Louvre. And I heard a local walk by, and she was very upset with the idiots, tourists taking videos just to joy with your eyes. It's like I was doing it for my parents who were too old to ever travel,
Right.
who would never get to Paris, never go to the Louvre. I wanted to be able to share that with them. And what you talked about, going hiking and letting them feel what it's like to be on the hike with you. I wished I could have done that with the Louvre, because it's different. It's radically different to be looking at pictures or videos, to be in the space and to feel like, oh my God, this painting is 20 feet tall and the person's foot is bigger than a real foot. And then down the hall, your friend goes, hey, come here. And it's like, what? Down there's like a little painting where it's a still life and things are smaller than they are in real life. And it's equally gorgeous. And then looking down and like between the arches, like the Venus is framed or something, just that, the perspective of being in the space, in the world, discovering it by, juxtaposition of different scale and colors and lighting and all that stuff, is radically different experience. And that could all just come back to you. When I was showing you the VR point of view, to the example of either we're all on the grid like this, or it's just your point of view in a crowd. When it defaults back to that's just back to normalcy. It kind of cracks me up that as soon as VR was discovered, they're like, oh, this is like a crazy space. It's like, well, no, it's our default point of view. But it's like, this would be a great place to make a movie or make a story or game. And like, to me, the default human experience of looking through the eyes, it's like I don't wake up in the morning and look around and go like, oh my God, I hope a movie happens here. It's like, no, I just feel like this is the default human, easy to navigate, easy to see my friends, all of that. It's wonderful that you can replace that with another place and be in the Louvre or be in the mountains hiking and all that stuff. But it doesn't immediately present itself to storytelling per se. It doesn't cry out for that. It absolutely cries out for human experience loud and clear. It's like, oh my God, that like the killer app is erase the distance between us and let us be together no matter where we are in the world, and let us be anywhere on the planet or in fantasy, like let's just be anywhere. But it's that togetherness experience is like the killer app part. And I'm going to make a movie or animatic story, it's like, yes, that's all. But now you're dealing in the same way with real life. You go, well, how do it, if just this whole space is usable for a story? Now we do that with theater, but we usually in theater sort of put things in front of us on a stage, or the new experience that's being made for the Galactic cruise liner, which is awesome. I was embedded with that for a couple of years. It's about to open. There you're inside of an experience, but you have a number of actors, I think up to like 100 actors that are role playing around you to carry on the ruse that you're inside this other reality. So it can be done, but its most immediate killer app usage is just togetherness with other people immediately and erasing the distance. So it's like erasing the distance is number one killer app. And then what you decide to do there, it's like, yeah, use your imagination, go nuts with, now that you're together, step one, that's the biggest magic trick. Now, what do you want to do together? You know?
But it's amazing. And, I can't thank you enough for you having the brain that you have and your ideas, which are seeds, I feel. And maybe what Zachary was talking about, we're trying to find a timeline. I'm a firm believer in the law of attraction. I mean, it creates energy in people's minds, and maybe it will accelerate us to get there a little quicker. The more people that believe this actually can be a reality.
Yes, I see a hand raised in the little square. It's Jonathan, I think.
You spoke a little bit about how we can insert ourselves into that Trojan horse and help make technology to be the realm of human emotion. And that really resonated with me. But I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who's really interested in storyboarding for animation or other projects that include animation. I was curious, what do you think animation has when it successfully makes animation the realm of human emotion? And I'm thinking about, different studios that each have their own in-house styles, not just visual styles, but also storytelling styles. And if you want to compare two very different kinds of studios, like maybe Studio Ghibli versus, Disney or another Western animation house. For stories that feel genuine, are they all accomplishing that emotion fundamentally the same way, or do you see them using different tools?
Well, I think it's animation. It's very interesting. It's sort of, I think one of the reasons that book musicals became popular in animation is there's a similar mindset that happens in animation and theater that's different from either real life or a lot of live action. There's this, as you step into theater to see a show, you don't say, oh, I know that's really not New York. That's just a scrim with the New York skyline painted on it. It's not real. You go in knowing, I know it's a stage and it's actors. We are going to play pretend, and that's a beautifully painted scrim. Kudos to the art director. So you go into a whole different mindset. If you see a movie about New York, that's live action, traditional live action. If it looks a little bit fake, you're like, bad effects. So stepping into an experience, knowing that you're going to see metaphor and symbolism and pretend, and it's a stylized space to sort of present mythology to us, and embracing that as you step in, wanting to go there. That happens every time people go into the theater. And I think that's inherent to animation. People step in, they know it's an artificial creation, and when it achieves things that feel like an emotion, a proper emotion, doesn't look like a documentary of it, but it feels like an accurate caricature of your emotion. For instance, if somebody's terrified and they rush out of the room in terror, if you were to film a live actor doing that and rotoscope it or do motion capture, you would see what it looks like when somebody runs out of the room terrified, but that is not what it feels like. If you caricature that so that it is now happens in like 6 frames and it's just a blur and there's papers, whipping in the wind after the person, that's what it feels like to be terrified. So to you, it rings through even more genuinely when it heightened it and made it like a distillation of the emotional essence of that moment for you. I think animation absolutely invites that kind of heightened stylization of emotional essence, and in the way that theater, like the artifice of theater, is for a definite purpose. We are all going there willingly, wanting to play in this playground, and I think animation takes us right into that same zone. And I think that's one reason why musicals, where people don't go, why did they suddenly break into song? It's like, if you just see people walking down the street doing that, you ask that question, but on the stage you don't, and in animation I think you don't. Although I don't want everything to be a musical. I enjoy things that are not musicals as well. But I think that's one reason there's a commonality there. And I love the people exploring different ways to achieve that style. I mean, oh my God, Miyazaki, I'm a total fan of that, which is a very different style of animation from Pixar and Disney and other places. And I think they're all legitimate explorations of different ways to make that caricature of life into emotional, like the emotional essence rather than the documentary fact. And so I embrace all of them. And I just think Miyazaki and that whole studio, but him especially with teams, have just really time and time again done things that make the characters seem absolutely alive in the moment and thinking and feeling, and then getting caught up in little trivial things that happen to go on, that just distract them for a moment and make it feel even more real. It's amazing. So I love all of that stuff. And I think as we go into those, and I'm glad you brought this up, if you and I go in, Jonathan, into a Pixar experience, and we're going to be with those characters, I think it's appropriate that I am the Pixar version of me and you're the Pixar version of you. And we sort of, instead of like the intruding photoreal humans stepping into their world, it would just be freaky. It's like we are appropriately caricatured into their world. And I think if we stepped into, a Studio Ghibli thing, it'd be great. If we were more anime looking, it would be great. But now, if you step into Star Wars, you want to be photoreal. And if you step into Marvel, you want to be photoreal plus an extra sheen of, over top of that. I just think, and then if you just are hanging out with each other talking, you just want to know genuinely what state your friend is in right now, instead of having the filter over top. But I think it's, that accepting all of it, instead of saying everything has to be cartoony or everything has to be real. It's like, there are times where all these different things are very appropriate. And so I hope, I just, I'm tired of people saying only VR is good or only AR is good, or you must always have a cartoon avatar over yourself. You can never look like yourself. It's just, it's all these firewalls around one solution is a big problem. So I think that the big blended reality push is, let's break down all those walls and really just say, as it's appropriate, blend things together to have them meet and merge and make all of us welcome into a space, either, from our home or actually out walking around in it, et cetera. And to say, if I leave for the park or I leave to go for a hike with Zachary, it's like, it'd be great to say, and you're welcome too. It's like, well, I don't want to wear a helmet. Well, you're still welcome. Well, I do like to wear a helmet. Well, you're still welcome. I want to wear air. You're welcome. I just want to look through my mobile. Well, you're welcome too. It's just, find ways to have everyone be able to participate. And I think that bigger picture, it's hard to get people participating in connecting all of it. I think Microsoft has the right mission statement right now. I don't think they're necessarily doing true service to everything equally. I think they're kind of trying to sell HoloLenses, but at least they have the right bullet points in some of their decks.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Anyone else want to join in? Jenny, or there's also, who's down there? Becca, who's drawing right now. That's an avatar. It's a drawn human.
I just wanted to point out, I was thinking how cool it would be to have like hiking games, like interactive, kind of like the Pokemon thing, but a whole new level of interactivity with the glasses and
Right.
you know, with a Pokemon Go game. I've never played it, but it's like I think
Yes.
it's AR.
Both of my sons were heavily into that.
Yeah, and then also how cool it'd be to like to go on a trail with like seats, and you go to see like Midsummer's Night Dream or something, or a play where you can have the glasses and then like it's all animated, mapped out to the scene, and you like walk to every scene. You know what I mean? Like setting up like a botanical garden, and then like each scene you would just walk, and then the characters would come in and use that real environment in front of you to act out the play.
Yeah, it's
with like
great.
little earbuds and the glasses. Just something like that. It'd be so cool.
Yeah.
There's so many, it's limitless of the things you could do.
Absolutely. I went to, this is a baby step toward that, but I went to Descanso Gardens for a while. They had a music arrangement that was in multiple speakers set throughout this oak forest. And it was really smart. There were a number of different tracks. You were talking about Walt doing the radio and the TV for stereo tracks. Well, it seemed to be maybe 3 or 4 different mixes. So you would be walking through like quadraphonic or something, but they had them placed quite a ways apart, like 50 feet apart or something. So as you walked through it, you really felt like it was mixing to different levels, but actually being in nature and on the move, and then feeling this overlay of an artistic statement that somebody prepared. It was somebody had composed a statement about the forest that was meaningful for them, and they wanted to share it with you. And as you moved through, you felt different parts of it as you went closer to one speaker and further away from it to the next one, etc. So yeah, to include AR elements that would be added in, there's just almost an infinite amount that you can do. That'd be great.
Very cool. Thank you.
Oh, it's definitely got my brain running.
Okay, cool. Gosh, I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in here.
Well, I was about to address the whole uncanny valley thing, but I was about to bring that up as a possible issue, but you kind of addressed that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that the work that's being done now deep in the Facebook lab, and with the efforts that happened with Epic Unreal, and it was 3 lateral and cubic motion and Vicon, together with Unreal Engine, and the example I showed you with the live driving of the eyes and just the natural looking movement in those eyes and stuff. It's possible. I've just seen so many times where the uncanny valley has been forced into a situation because of people making the avatars and making the movement of the avatars who frankly aren't qualified to know how anatomy works and how expression works. I was in meetings where they having to do with figures being built, and you have a reality of who's making it, if you could see, let me just add one example. If you could see a human portrait being made by 10 different people draw a human, and if you looked at any one, and you could look at one and go like, oh, this, you should never see a drawing of a human. That really creeps me out. It's like, human portrait is not a thing. You could look at another one and absolutely be in love with it and just go, oh my God, I always want to see portraits. I never want to see a photograph again. This is gorgeous. So it's how it's executed really matters. And I remember being in a meeting not that long ago where there were different expressions being budgeted and for something that was being built. And it's like, well, you pay for this stuff. You pay for eye movement. You pay for upper and lower lids and for cheeks and for smiles and stuff. You have to build all that stuff and it costs money. So trying to go, well, what can we drop? What can we not have? What can we not have express? And there were a number of people that were quick to go, oh, lower lids don't need to move. It's just upper lid goes down and up. And I'm like, oh my God, so much expression happens from lower lids. It's just an essential thing. But, if you don't have somebody in the room crying out for that, and just, you see sets of people just make decisions and hire somebody that's not so good at, at people likenesses. And then you see it and go, yeah, it's a problem. It's creepy. It's uncanny valley. And then you have it in the hands of someone else, like that group that quickly put that together. I was amazed how quickly they put that Siren project together. And also Andy Serkis, they had doing some Shakespeare recitations as himself and then as a big alien creature. I preferred the one of himself. But you looked at that and just went, it's delicate, it's beautiful, it's naturalized. I could just totally look at those and not feel any creep. In fact, I think that one, unlike the earlier one with Ellen Page, it's obvious it was an avatar. But I think that the one that from 2018 GDC, and that's still several years ago, through its movement and expression was acceptable and delightful, but also through its rendering was so real that you might not know that it's an avatar if it's presented in the right context. So I think we're there if it's in the right hands. And in fact, I think we're across the uncanny valley. We don't have to go back again. It's just there's so many places that have put into production methods that are inherently stiff and generic and not that well done, which make it seem like uncanny valley is this uncrossable thing, but it is crossable, and it isn't just here for everybody and for all the companies. It's still a big problem for a lot of them, but the ones that really pay attention and care about it and put the right people in charge, we can be well past it. So, but you'll still see a lot of it, and a lot of people that go good enough, which is not.
I just had a question. The moving floor. I swear that when I did the Marvel Void, that there was something like that with, you know what I'm talking about?
I didn't do that particular experience. I did Star Wars in the Void. I did another thing. I also did a horror film in the Void in beta form.
Is there no movement? Because I swore that there was a part when like we were separated from people, but was that just, I don't know. Is there nothing like that?
I remember being in a beta test of a horror piece for the Void, and one of the questionnaires afterwards was it too scary or not scary enough, and I put not scary enough. There was only one time where I felt like, okay, the creature's gonna get me, and I more believe it, and I was just sort of giddy with excitement because it was like, finally they made me jump. But there was a lot of stuff I heard people screaming through the walls, and it wasn't out to the public yet. We were all the testers, and I hear just people screaming Bloody Mary, and okay, I'm gonna go in there. But I was like, go ahead, make it scarier. But one of the moments was a separation from someone, and I was really frustrated where it came in the story because it had that tangible feeling of moving away from someone. So they did the opposite. Instead of I'm trying to sneak you away and having you believe you're always together, they did something where I think you didn't move that much, but they visually really made your friends seem like they were being pulled away from you. But they did it at a point where it was just an introduction. It's like, we're starting on the adventure and we're separating you. And then you went through the adventure. I thought, well, how much better to wait until you're in a really tough situation and maybe there's danger over there and your friend gets pulled into it. It's like, make me care about this moment of separation instead of just, this is how the ride works.
Yeah, I think it was just part of like, you were on one ship and the other people in the party were on another.
Right, it might be, but there's a number of different methods. I just know that there was one that was an amazing inventor who just keeps inventing and inventing like daily. But he had invented something that just was a different method than anyone else had. And you could just drop something on the floor and he could move it around. And you could stand on the floor and he could move you around. And it just it was a whole different thing. You just went, oh my God, this could go out in the world and be used for any number of things. So it quickly became an invention and a patent, and it's waiting to go out and be used in many ways. But my thing was, I just want to blow people's minds with the teleportation trick as one method. And then another one might be you're hiking and, you know, you're just moving your feet and you're actually not going anywhere, but you're exercising, you're moving your feet on that floor, and it's just sort of giving into that and keeping you parked in one spot so you don't run into the walls, but it's showing you your hiking adventure. So somebody could be at home walking with you and not bumping into walls while you're actually moving through on the real trail.
Just on a treadmill at home or something.
It's the equivalent of that, but it would accommodate any direction you turn. And
yeah, like in Ready Player One.
Right.
I'm not familiar with the gaming programs that are out there or the technical, for me, difficulties. Okay.
Right.
But in thinking through the process of everything that you've been sharing with us over the last few episodes, what exactly is already being done that is creating immersive reality, or what you call the blended reality, as far as film goes? Or not necessarily film. Okay, now there's all sorts of different things that are out there with Disney and everything else that I know is out there, but I'm not familiar with it. But is there anything that is being done, for example, in movie form or book form that can be done in your own home?
Yeah, there are augmented reality books and also VR. Just that you can set up. I set up in my office, but I had they happened to be Vive, and I set up. I really like their room scale stuff, which makes you feel very comfortable and not get motion sickness. But I did a tip brush paint program, and now they have other ones that were sculptures. But I started, I think, at like 6 o'clock at night and after work. And when I took my helmet off, I think it was 9 o'clock and the building was empty and I was just alone painting in the air. But that could work that worked in a confined space, but let you really express and move around your painting in the air. And that was a fun experience. I think they might've done it since, but in the early days, I wished I could have a collaborator painting with me. So you could be in your house, I could be in my house, but I could draw a line in the air and you would see it in your room. So
the equipment.
So then you could,
and I'll paint with you.
Right. So that idea of like co-painting would be great. One thing I did that was just so fun at the time, and I think you've seen, you can look up videos of Glenn Keane demonstrating tilt brush. But I drew a tree, and then I went and drew a bunch of flowers, and you can rescale things, but I didn't. I just wanted to walk around. So I actually drew them to size. But I drew like all the stems out of the ground, and then I went around and drew all the blossoms on top of it. And then I did a ripples of a water plane above the ground. And then I stooped down and like was drawing fish under the water. And it was just fun to walk around and think of your whole room as a cubic volume that you could paint in anywhere in the air, and it would just sit there. And but I think collaborative painting like that is terrifically fun. And I know they have any number of games that you can play together from your home as well.
Well, what I'm thinking at this point is like, how would something be created to where a person who is, now you were talking about the grandmother and reading the book with the child and all of that kind of thing, but in a specific format, is there anything out there already available that I would be able to read or watch and be a participant in that specific setting?
I'm not sure. I know there's in AR. I know there's a number of things that are out there. There's books, as Charlie Fink has put out a number of books. Tina, I'm sure you're aware of those, where he has books about augmented reality, and he has himself pop up out of the book and talk to you. And I think there's a number of other ones
Absolutely.
too, but I would think that an easier place to start is looking up augmented reality book experiences. And he sort of, as a writer for Forbes about things immersive, and he's very much it's funny, he's kind of an evangelical Doubtist. It's like, looks at all the new stuff, but is like, as much as he's enthusiastic about how much of it is growing, he's doubtful about things working until they work. But he put out some books about AR, and it's several years ago, and would have a number of things that interact with you while you're doing that book. The stamp and the stuff that we did that you saw in that little video, that was way back in 2011. It's just not many people have focused on keeping it truly dimensional. A lot of times they just do pop-up videos or something as an AR thing, which is not as interesting to me as characters or people. And
Yeah. I think of specific characters and scenes when I'm thinking of something that, for example, a project that I'm working on, and there's a particular scene that if it were going to be augmented reality or virtual reality, where somebody else, let's say, for example, Zachary was going to be a participant in this as one of the characters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was wondering. Is there something already out there that's doable that I could really take some work to, as an example?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
people
because they
have.
need a camera the way that like the glasses need to be like a good monitor. The other people would need like I see what you're saying, like a camera to actually put the other people into the goggles, like something like a 360 camera or something like that. Is that what you mean?
It would be like picking you up out of your space and putting you in the space that's created, that's part of the story, and now you're one of the characters in the story.
Right. There's some people are doing 3D reconstruction with that, where they would capture Zachary right now with just from all angles and map him exactly dressed the way he is right now. Most of the examples I showed you are not that. Most of them are examples where you pre-scan an avatar and you carefully make a well-modeled avatar ready to be deployed of Zach. And it could be, you can instantly change him where he's wearing armor or wearing what he's wearing now, or being wearing whatever's appropriate for the story you have him in. But Zach could drive his photoreal avatar in real time. As he moves, it exactly follows him. So puppeting your exact avatar, I think, is preferable to it actually grabbing your 3D self right now, wearing whatever you're wearing, and just copying that. It's, to me, much more limiting. To be able to come back later and say, I would like to change the way he's lit or change what he's wearing, but keep that beautiful performance he did.
Yeah, putting Flynn Rider back on the tree with the branch falling.
Right.
So
something else that I just found that I would love to see done with animated projects. And you could do it with other things too, but in animation it seemed to be really fun. I went over and was seeing work that Jeff Gibson was doing at Disney Feature Animation. He put out a wonderful VR piece called Cycles several years ago, and it was about a year before COVID hit. And it was the cutest thing. He would invite you to come put on the goggles, and then he had a box of Kleenex and said, well, this is for you when you come out of the goggles crying. And he actually did, and needed the Kleenex, because he did a very moving story about it, actually based on his grandmother, that she lived in a house, and like you see the moment that she and her young husband came into the house, and then how it changed over the years. And finally, it actually starts with the moment that they break it to her that at her capability and age, she has to move away from home and be in a care facility. So it's like it starts with the news that you're not going to live here anymore. And then it did going back through the history of the house. And it just was the sweetest thing. And you'd come out of the goggles with tears, and you'd be wiping the tears away. So he's like a skateboarder guy that's in his late 20s, I guess, and just but he went right to the emotional place as his starter project. And so Disney really backed him in doing that. He brought me in and then let me see some things they were doing for planning for another film they were working on. And they had built things just for the animators to come in and be in a building that was built in the art direction of the animation was completely reflected in this. So it was a stylized animated world you were stepping into in VR, and you were in a walk around volume. So I walked out of this woman's apartment onto a balcony, and then I was able to look way down, many stories down and across a valley to a big building that was across the way. And it was kind of a sway back balcony, so I felt a little dangerous being out on there. But they were doing that not for the audience ever to experience. It was just for the animators to come in and be in that world and see what it was like before they animated the characters, and just help everyone get on the same page as far as the world. But I told them, oh my God, you're building all these assets and it's so wonderful to walk through it. So why not put out a teaser beforehand that goes out to the public? So you in your home could put on VR and do the same thing I did, where you are in that world for a moment, and then have meet the character, see what she's up to that day. Maybe you talk to her and have a little AI where she's able to answer you back, but it's just going on about her day after she takes a moment with you. And then you see maybe a character that says something horrible behind her back, and you notice that. And then the experience is over, and then you go back again, and maybe you warn her. You say, when you were down the way, this person said something awful about you. Really? So now you've built up some investment in what happens to her. Now you go see the film, like whatever, 6 months later, a year later, and there she is, and you've been in that apartment, and you see the neighbor, and it's like, oh, that's the one that said the awful thing. I hope she's careful. And then as the film unfolds, you see parts of it where you've been there, you've met characters, maybe you talk to the villain, and you might have insights that the character doesn't have yet, and you hope they figure it out. And then after the film's done, to come back and have the system remember you and have her say to you, oh yeah, it's like, Christine, you warned me about that. I'm so glad I finally remembered. And it made a difference, so that you could have a pre and post immersive experience in the world with some of the key characters, and then an extra reason to want to go into sit in the theater. And as you sit in the theater, you'd be like, I was there. I was, and oh, I know her, I know him. So why not get really invested in, and you could feel bonding if you've had a conversation with the character as AI grows up. And so now you're in the curated movie and you see that unfold, but before and after, to have you are there live interaction with those people in that world, I think is really valuable.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I wish I had a better answer for you about just what was available to do things with.
Not available, it'll become available.
Yeah. Yes, all of this stuff is going to grow up.
I saw on Shark Tank what Zachary was talking about, something kind of similar and bulky, but they had this company had developed a sphere that someone could go inside. They had the VR goggles on, but they were strapped in somehow so they didn't fall over.
Yeah.
But they could run or walk in any direction.
Right.
As if they were on the trail. So wherever they were going in their goggles, they had this sphere that they could just travel around.
Yep.
It was kind of bulky looking, but they were headed that way.
Yeah, all of those brave experiments are going to grow up eventually and become more and more useful. We look back, it's funny, you look at the telephone, there was a funny video where there was an old rotary phone and they put it in front of somebody that was like 15 and they didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
So I'm sure the stuff we're using now, not that long from now, people look back and go, what is that?
What the
Oh,
heck was that?
That was a VR headset.
Like the multiplane
What?
camera. What the heck was that? What are they doing? This multiplane thing. Yeah,
funny,
I was thinking too. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's just Photoshop.
Right.
Photoshop.
Yes.
I was thinking of limited animation when you were talking about the lower lids and, let's see what we can cut from this to make it easier and cheaper. And the wonderful things that UPA did, they designed limited animation. So it was, but the things that they did to limit the cost on full animation.
But then they were really smart about
Yeah.
saying, given the really pared down items, how do you make them fully express what's intended? And so instead of just being a reductive thing where they do normal movement and take things away, it's like they would do heightened, very specific choreography based on the limited thing that they were using as a puppet.
Like Mr. Magoo, he did a little cycle that was sideways always. Yeah, he walked sideways all the time. Totally worked.
Absolutely. Well, this is it's been great to have you guys along for the adventure. This was a 3-part series, The Spark of Life, The Eccentricity Isn't Odd, It's Life, and then Immersive Emotions, and now Don't Escape Reality, Expand Reality. And it's been a joyous thing to be along with you. And I'm glad that, I could see and hear you and have these chats afterwards and not just be reading posted text comments. It's much more interesting to be with you. So Tina will have to huddle and see if there's another subject that people might be interested in. I don't know, maybe you could let Tina know if there's some area you would like to explore, like, you could flag it with her and we could huddle and see if there's something in particular you'd like us to explore.
I would love to revisit the digital campfire. I feel like we've just gotten the conversation going. We just scratched the surface. And I can't thank you enough, Jerry. This is truly special.
And nice to see you jump on, Lay, I think.
Yeah, Lay.
Thanks, Jerry. It's been awesome. I also dabbled a bit in some VR stuff for CBS. So I did the OneNote experience, which was a horror piece in VR. And we did I got on the tail end of that group and we did the Stranger Things experience as well.
Cool.
Yeah, so very excited to hear all the stuff you had to say, man.
It's fun. I mean, the Void and the virtual room on the French company, like to me, there's so much fun to be had with that stuff. And one thing I immediately wanted when I stepped into both doing the Void experience and the virtual room experience is I wish there was the blended reality aspect of my 2 sons who just they're so facile at all things immersive. And they've, from the youngest years, I had them on computers. Because I was way back, I was on the first Tron. So like computers were just in our house. But when I was in there and I was versus another character, and I was running around and, working up a sweat, I just went, oh man, I wish that wasn't like an automated character over there. I wish my sons had received a text. It's like, hey, your dad's in the Void. It's like, you jump onto your PlayStation and give him a hard time. It's like, it could be like me versus Ian and Wilder, and just get everybody involved. Be fun to just break those things open.
We had 2 conversations that were pretty interesting. That one of them was like, my dream was to have a video game where you're taking on dinosaurs, but you're actually in a warehouse and it's paintball with AR.
Cool.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then my one friend suggested becoming a scalper at a ball game, and you basically sell the VR seat to everybody outside.
Right. Yes. And I did one series that was actually a way I don't know where the deck is right now. I have it somewhere buried in my files, but I did a strategy for Deadmau5 to perform everywhere on the world, like take over everything. So I had one that was a dome theater, and what would be fed into the dome theater when you went in to party, at the center was a projection of him, so that you would see him life size at the center of the dome. projected around the dome was his point of view from his helmet from another party that he was at. So actually I had a head designed for him, a mouse head with lenses all over it. And it would collect his point of view and feed it into the dome that I walked into. So I was inside Dead Mouse's head. So every dome theater you'd walk into, you would all be entering Dead Mouse's head. And so he would decide what you would look at. He could look around and look down at his own hands doing the thing. So you feel like you're inside of the giant person's head. Then I had him in your home. So you were, when you were doing, what system was I using? But anyway, you were doing a game at home where it mapped your room and I had him dancing next to you on the screen. And then I had, I wanted Google Earth to do a deal where they would actually map his giant avatar onto Google Earth and let him walk around the world. So if you pull back from a city, you'd see like giant dead mouse walking over the city. Then he would like stop and use a skyscraper for a mixing, bay on the top of the skyscraper. And then if you happen to be by that building and you used AR, you would see the giant dead mouse actually using the building to do his stuff on. And so it was just like finding every possible way to have him take over the world. And then something I saw happen recently, it was in my deck years ago and it just happened, was I also wanted him to be inside of just video games in general, like big, massive play games. And while you were on your mission, he wouldn't interrupt you, but he would just be this 30-story tall giant who's providing the music for real. And it's like he's doing a live mix in your video game world as you play. And I saw recently that they had done that in one of the games where they had I forget which band had come in, but they had done a live performance inside of a multi-player game that had many thousands of people playing. And it was live entertainment. But yeah, that was one strategy of a number that would just say, he would take over all media. He'd be everywhere.
That's cool. Super cool. But thank you so much, Jerry. It's awesome listening to your stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Jerry, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right.
Have a
So
great
long.
one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.